Good morning. Today we're going to look at chapter 9 of our text. And this chapter is about managing the internal audit function. If you turn with me to page 9-1, we're going to look at the proper positioning of the internal audit function. Where exactly does that fall in the organization? The various organizational structures, roles and responsibilities, some of these key positions in internal audit. What are some attributes of well-executed risk management model and quality assurance? Now, when we turn over to page 9-3, also you see 9-2 and 9-3, a lot of standards there relative to this chapter. But what we see here with the internal audit function really needs to be at a senior management level. I don't think that's any surprise to any of you all as accounting majors with all your courses that you've taken up till now. But internal audit is pretty high up in the organization. Usually reports to the board or to someone at the top level, like a CEO. But it's there at that senior level really to give it visibility, gives a lot of authority, responsibility, and visibility. Because they need to be in a position where they can independently look at a company's processes, not just the safeguarding of assets, but also the efficiency and effectiveness of what a company does in achieving business objectives. So internal audit is really I know sometimes we think internal audit, maybe that's not that important. It's very high up in an organization. It's not unusual to see them physically separated from the rest of the operation. Very important that they maintain independence, objectivity, proficiency, and you do professional care. Page 9-5. Most companies have a CAE, this chief audit executive. They need to report to a level within the organization that allows internal audit activity to fulfill their responsibilities. Now, much of what's in this chapter you can read on your own. If you jump over to page 9-8, the planning process, very important that the internal audit plan is carefully thought out. And you have to really create an operating budget and allocate resources. Now, something that we oftentimes ignore is you have scarce resources, to use that economic term, scarce resources when you're budgeting, that you can't have an unlimited number of people working in your department. You are constrained by financial considerations of the number of staff and making sure they're well qualified staff to work in your department to fulfill their responsibilities. And when we talk about the risk appetite, I mean, there's nothing risk-free. There's always, you can't cross every T and dot every I, as the old saying goes. You have to prioritize. And he points that out here at the bottom of page 9-8 with the internal audit plan. It says, prioritization of key risk scenarios facing the organization must be appropriately managed by the organization to achieve the key business objectives. And that's a real challenge as a manager when you get into a company that you have limited resources. I think some companies you might work for, like the federal government, maybe state government, maybe they're not as I guess free with the amount of people they can hire as the federal government is, but there's a lot of waste and sometimes resources are just about unlimited compared to what you have in most companies. And then jumping over to page 9-9 with Practice Advisory 2020-1, the communication approval necessary there by the CAE. You know, communication is so important. He or she's going to submit annually to the senior management and the board for review and approval a summary of the internal audit plan, the work schedule, the staffing plan, right? And of course, the financial budget, which is the culmination of all of those various parts that I just mentioned. The approved engagement work schedule, the staffing plan, financial budget, and making sure that all of these internal audit activities, objectives, and plans support the organizational objectives and consistent with the internal audit charter. If you turn over to 9-11, again, using this term right sizing, which is kind of unusual in this chapter, the staffing and scheduling of an internal audit function, of having limited folks to accomplish your mission, having a reasonable financial budget, also having input at the very top. Sometimes maybe the resources aren't as constrained as what you'll have at the operational level, but nonetheless, there aren't unlimited resources to accomplish your goals in the internal audit function, and specifically by the CAE. You know, the staffing plans, HR part as well, having qualified people, the skills and knowledge necessary. Very important to have qualified people in these positions to carry out the internal audit plan. The more qualified folks you have, of course, it costs more, but if you have more qualified folks, you're going to make smarter decisions that are probably more efficient and more effective. And a lot of these HR things here, 9-12, 9-13, your hiring practices, strategic resourcing, training and mentoring. The training is just not a one and done. Training is ongoing, and which leads into the top of page 9-13, career planning, professional development, that the education, the learning process is never end. An internal audit needs to understand holistically the entire organization, the operations, and how that impacts the financials. Very important. But the training, the mentoring that goes on, having strong people in these positions that move up that can, again, backfill the succession planning that's talked about here, of having people come in to be mentored, and you have a very strong organization throughout. And that applies really to any department, not just internal audit. The danger many times that I've seen is managers will hire people who are less qualified than they are, sort of a fear factor there, wanting to, I guess, secure their position, and they've got unqualified people working for them. But of course, that can always blow up in your face if you've got people working for you that aren't qualified, that can't accomplish the tasks that are at hand, and can take that person down as well. So you need to have a culture, a tone at the top, all the way down, of people hiring folks that are better than they are for positions. Very important stuff here from an HR consideration in managing an internal audit department. You can read really most of the rest of this. I know on 9-21, I'll just point out there again, I've mentioned there the control, the internal audit activity from IIA Standard 2130. The internal audit activity must assist the organization in maintaining effective controls by evaluating their effectiveness and efficiency in promoting continuous improvement. That is common language in any company. We have that here at ETSU in the AACSB, our accreditation. Every 5 years, we have a CIR, that's continuous improvement review of our accreditation. And then during that process where we write a huge report and they come on site and talk to various people and see if we're doing what we say we're doing in our plan. But they expect continuous improvement in what we're doing. It's not just, are you still doing what you were doing last time? They want to see improvements in areas of technology, entrepreneurship. It's a new thing coming up. But that is something that you have to continuously improve, just like Deming taught with Kaizen events, or excuse me, lean manufacturing, everything that goes into that. Lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, continuous improvement, which is really process variation, the continuous improvement of velocity and also process variation. Same applies here in internal audit, trying to help the corporation, because it's not just about catching people who are doing things that are wrong. It is about that, plus safeguarding of assets, but also about adding to the bottom line. And they list that there, safeguarding the assets there, middle of page 921. Effectiveness and efficiency of operations, compliance with laws, regulations, and contracts, reliability of the financial and operational information, accomplishing the strategic objectives. And then the quality assurance there that you can read through the rest of this chapter. But that's just a brief overview of this chapter. Again, look at the deliverables that I have assigned there and take care of that. Obviously, case, if there is one, or the discussion question. I think there's a case for this chapter. You need to have that at least 1,000 words. Same process as before. Of course, the multiple choice is pretty straightforward, but be sure and get that done and turned in on time. And we'll talk again soon.